Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Tish Long, Chair of the Intelligence and National Security Alliance Board of Directors, and Lieutenant General Susan Lawrence, United States Army retired, President and CEO of AFCEA International.
So good morning to everyone and welcome. You know, I'm going to deviate from the script right off the bat. Always dangerous. But I just want to say that I am delighted to share the stage with my friend and colleague, Lieutenant General retired Susan Lawrence. Susan, it's been a little while since we've seen each other. Welcome.
This is great.
That was like at the end of my remarks. I just thought we should do that up front. So, hard to believe, but this is the 9th consecutive year that AFCEA International and the Intelligence and National Security Alliance are proud to bring together national thought leaders from the public and private sectors for a strategic dialogue about the imperatives in current and future intelligence missions, policies, and investments. Today and tomorrow, senior leaders from the armed forces, government, industry, and academia will examine their top challenges as well as the opportunities in advancing creative solutions to mitigate risk to the nation's safety, security, and prosperity. This kind of dialogue between the public and private sectors is at the heart of both of our organizations. And we are extremely pleased with the strong show of support we have received from you, our members, and sponsor partners. Clearly, there's a high demand for this type of forum and dialogue, and clearly to have it in person. So thank you all so much for joining us. AFCEA and INSA have a long and successful history of collaboration on this signature event. And again, I am honored to work with Susan as the President and CEO of AFCEA International. Susan?
Thank you, Tish. It is great to be with you again. It's been way too many years. So glad we've got our partnership back together personally and professionally. We're very excited to partner with INSA, who has been just fabulous to work with. And I'm looking forward to seeing our numbers this afternoon. I think this may be our largest summit. So,
I think so.
Yeah. So for our audience, you all are key to the program through your participation. And so we thank you for being here. For our sponsors, we thank you, and we'll recognize you in a minute. But no question is a dumb question. Engagements during the breakout sessions are so important, getting to know each other and learn about each other's organizations. So get out there on the floor in between our sessions and don't be shy. An event of this type and size is hard to pull off without our key sponsors, and we do want to recognize them. But I have said at every one of our events this year where we have exceeded our numbers pre-COVID has been amazing. And the real heroes for us has been the industry partnership that has been at each of these events. So I want to personally thank you again for the time here. So Trish and I would like to recognize and thank our premier sponsors, IBM, Jacobs Technology, Maxar, and Peraton. Our keynote lunch sponsor today is Lockheed Martin, and our reception sponsor this afternoon is going to be Fed Data. Our Epic App Challenge sponsors, which we will announce our winners sometime here, Ray, when we announce at lunch, good. CGI Federal, Riverside Research, Leidos, Thomson Reuters Special Services, along with CrowdStrike, Elastic Earth, MFGS, Northrop Grumman, Runecast Solutions, Tanium, we got a lot to thank, and Trellix. So thank you all for the sponsors and all the other sponsors that are here as well, and for those of you out there on the floor taking time and the resources to come here and share what's going on in your organizations, again, is very, very key to us. Exhibitors are central to our summit, and we want to make sure that we thank you properly as we go forward. And we encourage you to stop by the exhibitors' kiosks this morning during the breaks at the end of the day. It is also our hope that every attendee will spend time exploring the creative technology solutions on display and meeting the dedicated professionals who are behind these technologies. Ma'am?
We would also like to welcome the many members of the press who are in attendance. For our speakers and panelists, please remember the summit is on the record. We are recording the plenary and breakout sessions, and we'll make them available online in the next couple of weeks. We will be taking questions from the audience throughout the program, and during the plenary sessions, please submit your questions by email and send them to questions@intelsummit.org. And if I can ask, submit the questions early if you can, so our amazing moderators have time to work them into the discussion. Having moderated, I know how hard that can be as you're thinking to the next and also listening to the answers. During the 6 breakout sessions, moderators will be taking your written questions on index cards, and those will be available in each of the breakout rooms. As always, concise questions are greatly appreciated. If you are going to share images, and we hope that you do, and any content from the summit, we encourage you to use the hashtag IntelSummit22 so our teams can help amplify your messages. And finally, at the close of the program today, we will hold a networking reception. Special thanks to our reception sponsor, FedData, and it will be in the foyer just outside this ballroom. So that's another opportunity to network and build on your relationships, and we really hope to see all of you there. Now, without further ado, let's get on to our opening plenary session.
Okay. I guess we're on. All right. Oh, there's Richard.
Sir, I was slow. I'm sorry. Hey, thank you. Thank everyone for attending today. Thank you for this opportunity to introduce this esteemed moderator and this panel as we get started this morning. It's a great time to be involved in NCTC, a great time to share of lessons learned and all of the capabilities that everyone brings to the Intel community. And we, Jacobs, have been strong partners of FCA and of NCTC, and we are just elated to participate in this conference today. We have over 3,600 Intel professionals around the world supporting the Intel community, and it's my distinct pleasure today to introduce one of those professionals as we talk about them. And so our distinguished moderator, 35 years in the Army, served as the Director of Intelligence for U.S. Central Command, Command in General, Army Intelligence and Security Command, served as the G2 for the Army. He is currently the chair for the FCL Intelligence Committee. In addition, he has served on the Army Science Board and the National Security Alliance Advisory Board. Please join me in welcoming Lieutenant General retired Bob Noonan.
Thank you. Thank you. So now it's my turn to introduce a real intelligence professional who's at pretty much the highest level you can attain in our business, dealing with a critical threat area, and that's the Honorable Christine Abizaid. Christine Abizaid was sworn in as the director of the National Counterterrorism Center on July 29th, 2021. She is the 8th Senate-confirmed director and the first woman to lead the United States counterterrorism enterprise. Possessing 14 years of national security experience, Ms. Abizaid has served in key leadership positions. And during the Obama administration, Christie served as the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Central Asia. I don't think there was much going on then, was there? I don't know.
We were wrapping it up.
Yeah. Prior to joining the Office of the Secretary of Defense, Christie served on the National Security Council staff as both Director for Counterterrorism and a Senior Policy Advisor to the Assistant to the President for Homeland Security and Counterterrorism. She also served for 7 years with the Defense Intelligence Agency's Joint Intelligence Task Force Combating Terrorism as the Senior Intelligence Analyst in the Afghanistan-Pakistan Division in the Iraq Middle East Division. During this time, she deployed several times throughout the Middle East, including a tour as the Senior DIA Counterterrorism Representative in Iraq. Prior to assuming her current position, she was an executive at Dell Technologies in its Global Operations Organization, where she led supply chain assurance initiatives. And she has also spent time at the Defense Innovation Unit in Austin. We'll talk about that. She has also served on the board of directors for both the Middle East Policy Council and the Responsible Business Alliance. She is extremely well decorated. She's also, she holds a BA in psychology from the University of California, San Diego, and an MA in international policy from Stanford University, the Honorable Christine Abizaid.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you running out the clock with that one.
I enjoyed the video too, because
it's pretty good.
speeds things along. So our theme is great power competition. So you must be asking yourself, well, why do we have the director of Nctc here? Well, because that's a threat that doesn't go away. It's a threat that keeps on giving. The world's changed a lot since 9/11, but remains a dangerous place, and lots of resources have been realigned to counter great power competition. Russia's at war with Ukraine. Economic and potential military tensions exist in the Indo-Pac theater between China, Taiwan, and other allies, and North Korea and Iran both seek nuclear capabilities as they strive to be regional hegemons. So, Christy, let me ask a two-part question to start off. One, where do we stand in the CT fight? And two, how has this realignment of resources impacted you at Nctc?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. It's absolutely relevant as we in the broader CT community continue our work. And let me just start by saying I think the shift to great power competition is exactly the right thing for the country. As we look at where our adversaries are advancing, and we look at the kind of competition that is going to serve this country and the globe best, we are prioritizing our U.S. national security resources in exactly the right way. And frankly, as a CT professional, I want to take a little bit of credit for that. Part of the reason that we can make this pivot of choice, this shift to focus on great power competition, is because of the phenomenal work that our CT community has done over the last 21 years to protect the country from another 9/11, notwithstanding the fact that the threat from various terrorist adversaries continues against our country today. We have developed a collaborative, communicative, highly integrated CT operational intelligence environment over the last 21 years that has done yeoman's work to protect the country. And we need to be able to continue that work, but we need to do it in a different way. We need to invest in what we've done well. We need to look at those collaboration mechanisms, those interagency environments that kind of give us our best bang for our buck. And we need to support the CT effort as a really important enabling function for us to go and do other things as a government. There's always going to be need for a CT community, a CT mission. And I think the challenge for us as CT leaders in this era of what is fundamentally transformation for the CT community is how do we do it in a smarter way? How do we do it more efficiently while maintaining the same level of effectiveness as when we were the primary national security priority and kind of dominating the national security agenda? And it's really important that we kind of find this effective way of managing a decline in resources, and the decline is real and appropriate, because the threat environment remains so critical. Now, that is not to say the threat to the homeland today is like it was on 9/11. In fact, the threat today in the homeland is less acute than we've seen it at any time since 9/11. But it's diverse. It is geographically dispersed in a way that makes the efficiency quotient that much more important, because you have a wider swath of territory to cover, a wide array of targets, and a diversity of targets that you need to understand and protect against that create complexity for a CT environment that's not just focused on Al-Qaeda anymore. Al-Qaeda matters. Al-Qaeda's affiliates matter. We know that they continue to invest in attacking the United States as a primary enemy, attacking the West as a primary enemy. But we also know that they are engaged in local conflicts. They have networks in Yemen, in North Africa, in Syria, parts of Afghanistan that remain intent on both addressing local grievances, becoming part of those local communities, but also always with an eye on the West. For ISIS, we have seen such a dramatic turn in fortune for the overall ISIS network. And if you look at that core group of individuals that were running a caliphate, territorial caliphate from Syria, and engaging in major transnational terrorist attacks from that safe haven in the 2014, 2016 timeframe, that's not the threat we deal with today. But we've seen them branch out. We've seen a growth in ISIS branches across particularly the African continent. And we see investments in different parts of what is still a global network, and interested in, once again, that kind of international notoriety that comes with focusing against the West, and with trying to deal with their local adversaries. And Afghanistan's a really interesting story along those lines about where the ISIS affiliate is and how we need to continue to be concerned about it, even if we're not present in Afghanistan. But add to that, beyond the Sunni extremist threat, the continued concern we have about Iranian willingness to retaliate for the death of Qasem Soleimani. Add to that the kind of lone actor threat that is the most likely way we would see an attack emerge here in the homeland or anywhere else. And that is a lone actor threat that can be motivated by any number of ideologies, whether that's a Sunni extremist ideology, whether it's a racially or ethnically motivated extremist ideology. And the disruption challenge with non-networked individual attackers that can choose to mobilize with a variety of factors and very few indicators is a major challenge for us in the CT community to stay ahead of. And our challenge is to protect Americans wherever they are, and understand where the inflection point is with any threat environment we're dealing with. So we still have a lot of work to do, and it's really important that we focus our energies on the most urgent and prioritized threats.
Yeah, well, You guys did a great job. We had the death of Zawahiri, who I remember when I was first at CENTCOM in 1996, he popped up on the screen. So it took a while, but he's gone. So congratulations to the whole enterprise for that.
Absolutely.
That was great work. You and I talked earlier, and we might as well get it on the table, this whole idea of, you said you have to branch out, you're going to interface more with local law enforcement, the FBI and all that. And the question always comes is, what's NCTC's role with domestic extremists?
Yeah.
And so I thought we'd just get that out of the way right away.
All right, let's do it. Well, first of all, as we think about where we are in the overall CT environment and the mission, which is to kind of warn those most likely to be impacted by a threat that one is coming and help them develop tools to address them, I view the outreach mission as part of that as critical. And that means that you're not just serving, though we will continue to serve, policymakers in DC, the NSC, the president, and we will address and help them design their strategies against global terrorism. But you also need to engage with state and local elements. You need to be able to characterize for them the varied nature of this threat environment we're dealing with and how it might manifest in their particular community, or how to defend against an attack that might present itself at one of their facilities. So we work really closely with the FBI and DHS to make sure that the intelligence base that we have that can be shared at a level of classification that they can actually access it, we think that that's critical to the future of how we do CT customer service. And so we've done a lot of work at NCTC to think about what our strategic role is in writing at the right level of classification, but engaging at the broadest level of CT customer, from warfighter, from police officer, from firefighter or mental health professional, to make sure that they understand the kinds of things that we know as the US government's central knowledge bank on terrorism, and international terrorism in particular. Now, so that means we're engaged domestically, but we're engaged on the range of terrorism relevant topics with that domestic audience. There are communities all over the country that are going to care about whether al-Shabaab is going to attack the United States from their base in Somalia. Now, what has changed in this kind of overall threat environment that I've described, especially over the last 20 years, is the emergence of domestic violent extremism. And when NCTC was formed, it was formed primarily as an organization to connect the dots between international and domestic, find ways to bring all of that data together. So if there was a connection to be made, we were a fail-safe in ensuring that connection happened. And in the domestic violent extremists arena, it's really important that our knowledge base and our expertise and our ability to kind of synthesize at a strategic level operational picture for policymakers, for field elements. It's really important that we can apply that to this problem that has emerged in the country with domestic violent extremism. We do that, however, in support of FBI and DHS. They are the lead operating agencies. They have their own intelligence shops. And as we look at what is a purely domestic counterterrorism priority, we have to be really judicious in the way we approach it and the care that we take. And it's important we do it right, because it is a major threat. In the United States homeland, I was just looking at figures today. In the US homeland, there have been 45 attacks since 9/11 that were either inspired, enabled, or directed by a foreign terrorist organization. In half that time, since 2010, there have been 45 attacks that have been conducted by domestic violent extremism. And the casualty count for those DVE, those domestic violent extremist attacks, is quite high. And the predominant sort of strain here is those engaged in racially or ethnically motivated violent extremism. And the degree to which they are, affecting broad swaths of our population with not just the attacks that they do, but the fear that they create is really problematic for the national security of our country. And so as the National Counterterrorism Center, we have to stand ready to support all elements that are engaged in this with the kind of expertise that we can bring to bear, understanding how that is connected to the transnational environment, looking very specifically for any sign of transnational linkages, but also helping them characterize what is a strategic threat in the most strategic way.
Okay, thank you. So our allies and partners, they're also faced with great power competition concerns right now. So how's that working with the partnerships that you've enjoyed at Nctc over the years, and frankly, 20 years? You've had great partnerships, I know that, with some of the agencies. How's that working out now? Are they suffering the same realignment issues that you are with resourcing and focus?
Yeah. I think it depends on the partner. One thing I would say is, we talk about domestic violent extremism as a purely domestic phenomenon, but you go across so many of our partners, and they're dealing with some version of manifestation in their own domestic constituencies as well. And so, the way that we can learn lessons with each other, understand the trajectory that's happening in any particular environment, and the kind of transnational ideological underpinnings for it, that's been a really important part of a lot of my conversations, particularly with the Five Eyes countries and Western nations. It's been really interesting to have left the CT community around the 2014 timeframe and come back to it now and see just how different that alliance and partnership aspect is of our counterterrorism fight, especially as our footprint in Iraq and Afghanistan has gone down. That coalition aspect is still paying dividends in other ways of collaboration. And so to see so many of our Europeans stepping up to the plate, you look at what the French led in North Africa for so many years and how important that contribution to the counterterrorism fight has been. The Brits are obviously long-standing partners, but also more importantly, many of our partners that are in the environment where they're dealing with insurgencies and terrorism on a daily basis, those are really important relationships, especially where CT is the foundation for our influence and connectivity with any given government, but great power competition dynamics are also coming into play there. And so how we, for instance, in parts of North Africa, leverage a long-standing CT relationship to the benefit of understanding the great power competition dynamics that might be in play in any given country. And kind of don't think of these as standalone items, but really all about a spectrum of a relationship and how the United States can support it. I think that's a really important thing for us as CT professionals to think about our contribution in. And so marrying up these ideas of strong relationships with whatever those priorities are, the kind of capability a CT presence can provide, but that also creates capability, builds partner capacity in a way that benefits other national security priorities. I think that's a really important angle.
Yeah. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit here, and let me talk about your time in the private sector and at DUI in Austin, DIU in Austin, DUI in Austin. And I want you to reflect on those experiences and how it's impacted maybe your vision for Nctc and your idea of operations. I've heard you speak of operational excellence and the need for an enterprise that's efficient and focused on mission accomplishment.
That's right.
I've also heard you speak about people create boutique technologies to solve a special problem. However, inside the enterprise, that can be disruptive. Some of those. So what's your take on innovation and technologies and how they be better integrated into the IC? I mean, we talk about AI, ML, how we're integrating. We're going to have a panel here later on OSINT, the whole social media aspect, on all of that. You've had the opportunity to have your foot in the private sector and a foot in the public sector. And we always talk about how we're going to do innovation quicker, and how we're going to fix acquisition. Somehow it never gets done. That's a personal opinion. It's probably shared by most in the room. But your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, across my experience, both in the private sector and even before I got into the private sector, trying to understand the Defense Innovation Unit, its mission, and what we were trying to field for our warfighters, there are a couple things that emerge. One, as much as we're talking about innovation and technology, as a government, we really need to think about innovation in processes, innovation in acquisition models. I mean, if you think about what the Defense Innovation Unit was doing, at least at the time that I was in Austin, it wasn't just hunting out great COT solutions. It was figuring out how to field those as quickly as possible to those that needed it. And it was usually addressing a need that had been longstanding. The rapidity with which technology is being developed and refreshed, and that juxtaposed against our long lead 5-year, 10-year, 15-year budget cycles that don't really have the agility to absorb that level of transformation, I think it has to be solved, and it's got to be solved in kind of a public-private partnership that thinks creatively about how to bring what we need from a national security perspective into the government in a more effective way. But there's also, a question of how we as a government are prepared to understand the data environment. You talk about open source, the Open Source Center, and how important that is to, any view on a difficult national security challenge. And I just don't think that we as an intelligence analytic community have really appreciated how much exists in the open source environment, how much data is out there, and by the way, will continue to grow, and then how to actually seamlessly integrate that into the way we think about our exquisite intelligence collection against it. And so, I talk about the outreach mission and how important that is. I talk about how important producing at an unclassified level is, so we can share insights with a broader array of folks. But that's also in a recognition that there is a lot of really important data and information that exists outside of classified channels that really can inform our understanding of what's happening strategically. And if we're not incorporating the best of our technology in the fastest way possible and leveraging all sources of information and protecting the way we do it so that we can maintain the trust of the American people along the way, it's all of those things that have to work together so that we can be effective. Technology acquisition is really difficult in any environment, and I think any organization that has been around for more than 20 years is dealing with a transformation that starts as a concept of, hey, let's get more AI and ML capability, or let's integrate more NLP into what we're doing. But really, as they peel it back, it's got to be a focus on the fundamentals that enable that transformation. These boutique solutions that we've created, the middleware that helps us get around the systems that we've built. The fundamentals of technology transformation are about clean data. It's the boring stuff like the data lake that actually allows you to train those models and make those connections. And if we focused so much on the innovation side without addressing some of the root causes of why it's so difficult to field in our complex data environments that have been built up in different ways over the last, couple of decades, then I think we're going to miss a great deal of capability that those cutting-edge technologies can offer us.
Yeah. Okay, we're having troubles with the questions, so if you have any, if you can bring them up or put them on cards. Along the same line, so you're at Nctc, you have a particular area, counterterrorism fight. But the community writ large, the analysts that were in the community in my day are not the same people that could succeed today. So what are you looking for in your analytical workforce? What are the traits? How is it different? And what are the things you're seeing emerge as the real strong characteristics of your analytic force?
Yeah, so, even when I was recruited into the intelligence community, it wasn't because of my in-depth background in psychology, right? I mean, there was a lot that I came in and had to learn from the ground up, and we're going to need to do that across so many different mission priorities across the intelligence community. In some ways, what you're looking for are personality traits, right? Mission-focused and purpose-driven. Who wants to come and do great things in a way that is not enabled in any other environment you can think of in the private sector? And how do you do it in a way that actually, helps those governments, those organizations that have been longstanding, innovate along the way? I think of a new analyst coming into Nctc, and I want to bring them into an environment where they sit down and the systems that they had at university are not light years ahead of what they're able to deal with in the classified environment at Nctc. And so, one, we need to deliver on the expectations of people coming in about a modern technology environment that allows them to be as conveniently engaged with the range of data that we have as the mission requires, but as like their personal life would allow. I think we're a long ways from that, not just at Nctc, but in the IC, and so I think we've got to focus there. I really want to see mission-focused, purpose-driven data analysts. I really want to see mission-focused, purpose-driven foreign language specialists. I want, area expertise, including China area expertise, coming into Nctc and understanding the unique capability that the CT community has built over the last 21 years, and then taking that and applying it later in their career to those other hard targets that we have to prioritize. I think, in today's era, CT should be a stop along the way of a well-rounded intelligence officer's career. I think you're getting farther and farther away from the people that joined the CT fight like me as a call from the attacks on 9/11. And I think that's okay. And so the question is, how do we take what we have built and deliver it for today's analyst that is, again, from multidisciplinary, willing to work across boundaries, really understands and wants to work within complex data environments, integrate that into some of the highest level and most exquisite collection that we have, and then kind of make us better and then bring what's best about us to other really hard problems that we have as a government.
And how are you doing? I mean, let me ask another way. How can academia and maybe industry help? Do we need to talk about, do a couple of years in industry, a couple of years at Nctc, all of that stuff that we're kind of looking at with the cyber stuff right now? Kind of we've done for years with the medical corps, moving people in and out, all that. Are we looking at things like that? I mean.
So we are, and I know at ODNI that's been a big priority, is to try and understand sort of how we get a better ability to integrate private sector, public sector, and rotational opportunities. And I think that's essential. I have been able to leave the government, go to the private sector, and come back because I am a political appointee. That's not the path that will sustain how we actually develop at scale across different parts of our government. And so we should think of models that enable that. We should get our government employees the best private sector training that they can get, and we should bring them back. And it's really interesting. I think it's hard for the government to compete with private sector. There's a lot of questions on remuneration. There's a lot of questions on any number of priorities that the private sector can kind of work at speed, where government, you can lose your mind when it doesn't. But what we don't lack in government is mission and purpose-driven work. And so at the end of the day, when I left my company to come and serve once again for the United States government, I got nothing but cheers, thank yous, and appreciation. And I know that there is a real closeness with especially this kind of crowd of private sector experts and how they connect to national security mission sets and national security communities. And so how we kind of breed that sense of purpose, that sense of mission, and that sense of technology and innovation and speed of operation into just being better together, I think is absolutely essential for our future.
So we have some questions here. One of them is we want to talk about, there was also success not only with Zawahiri, but Abdullah on what's that impact been on ISIS operations? And is there a sense of divisions or fractures now that's occurred in ISIS? I mean, I know the classification, but what could you tell us? And people are trying to also figure out where's Al-Qaeda fitting in all this thing now.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, just to summarize, I think the two biggest CT actions since I began my tenure at Nctc, there was I think it was February takedown of Haji Abdullah in northeastern Syria, and then the removal from the battlefield just last month of Ayman al-Zawahiri, I guess the very end of July. The fact of those operations are, I think, reflective of just how serious this threat environment remains. You don't get presidential approval to, conduct very risky operations and intense operations of that level of criticality without a recognition of what that threat environment looks like. And when you think about the CT successes we've had over the course of our campaign over the last 21 years, so much of it comes down to making sure that these organizations have to stay in survival mode so they don't have the time and space to plan against us in the United States and those of our partners and allies. And so operations like the Haji Abdullah raid, operations like that, which takes down Ayman al-Zawahiri, I think are really critical to sustain the capability for, and they're very complicated to pull off. I mean, the intelligence build that's required, the operational precision that's required, the kind of modeling and expertise that comes from across the community is really just phenomenal to see in action. Now, Haji Abdullah's death, I think, happens, what's important about it is not just him, but it's that he is, the last in a long line of leaders who are no longer, trying to attack the United States and trying to, rout Syria and regain territorial control in a way that I think has really reflected a major talent loss in ISIS senior leadership and has caused them to focus on kind of branch expansion that has diffused the threat and again made the focus on the United States less acute than we had seen in prior years. For Al-Qaeda, I think about the Ayman al-Zawahiri strike and how important it was. He was a strategic and important leader for the remaining Al-Qaeda network. And the remaining Al-Qaeda network, we don't talk about the way we did immediately post 9/11 because it's so different. It's disaggregated, again, in Yemen, in North Africa, in Syria, in East Africa. But all of those branches, what they had in common was deep respect and fidelity to Ayman al-Zawahiri, who led for longer than Osama bin Laden after the 9/11 era. And so his removal from the battlefield, I think about how important it was, not just for the threat that he posed, but for the tie that he created across the Al-Qaeda network. And that tie is weaker today because he's not on the battlefield, and the weaker and the more diffuse that Al-Qaeda network is, I think the better for US national security.
Amen. That's it. So you've had some great successes over there at Nctc, and over the years, your predecessors as well. What would you say are the top things on the analytical side, maybe some innovations in dealing with IC collaboration that have been shared with the others, or things that should be highlighted? Things that maybe go below the radar but this audience might be interested in.
Yeah, so one of the things I'm really excited about at Nctc is the significant data analytics capability and the focus of our data analytics group and what we bring to bear for the wider CT community. One of the things that's unique about Nctc is it's because of our authority structure, the one place in the CT community where we can have so much US government data co-located and exploited in real time. And that means that our data analytics group, our data analytic experts that exist in different parts of our organization really kind of take seriously their job to work against threat, to discover threat, to connect those dots and find the right big data algorithms that allow us to do threat discovery in a way that previous data environments didn't let you do. We've created that, and great credit to my successors and their organizations for having built this this comprehensive set of CT data that resides in this place here at Nctc, and then the capability and the expertise, just watching some of our sharpest and most technology literate employees look at that data for what kind of opportunity it can provide us to disrupt the next threat.
Yeah. So we're running a little short on time, but let me wrap it up a little bit. I think it wasn't lost on anybody that as we started off today's conference, we had 3 women and an old white guy sitting up here.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. But we've seen an emergence, and this is all great stuff over the years, and especially women in the IC, in leadership positions, yourself, Tish, Susan in the Army and stuff. And so the emphasis on diversity, and the world is a different place now, and great power competition or cultures, attitudes that people we just don't necessarily understand unless we bring in the right diversity to attack that problem.
That's right.
So your thoughts on all this? I mean, you've had a great career. We're all very, very proud of you. And but as you've come up here, any thoughts you might have on how we expand that diversity, on how women have succeeded? Any tips you can give to the audience here on as they help their workforce diversify as well?
Yeah, well, thanks for the question. You warned me that you would ask it, and especially on how do I feel about being a woman leader in the IC, I never know how to answer that question. I will be perfectly honest, because I have had the fortune of learning from Tish Long, from watching Avril Haines lead, from seeing Stacey Dixon succeed in every environment that she is placed in, from working with Lisa Monaco as President Obama's counterterrorism advisor. And I am lucky to be of a generation where I had female leaders role model what it was like to lead these very complex national security challenges. And I feel really lucky to have been exposed to that level of expertise and frankly, brilliance. When I think about sort of how successful the women I have been surrounded by have been in the intelligence community, in the national security community, I think about zooming out to the diversity principle in general.
Right.
And, it's often said, I will reinforce what everyone in this room knows, diversity is not a good thing to do. It is the essential thing to do for mission success. And, finding ways to incorporate different voices, different perspectives, looking at ways to bring out the introverts in what is a historically introverted culture in the US intelligence community, giving people a space in different environments to feel like it's their space, to feel like it's home, even if even if the person next to them looks nothing like them. It's the only way that we will succeed as a country. And if you look at the adversarial environment that we deal with, if you just think about the different threats that we are dealing with, whether from Russia, from China, from so many different terrorist actors, our diversity is one of our key strengths as a country. And if we don't bring that in as a mission imperative, if we don't, as a national security community, find ways to recruit, retain, demonstrate how diverse talent can succeed in our environment, then I think we're going to limp along against these other national security challenges and adversaries that don't have the advantage that we do naturally as such a rich and full country. And so it's really important for me to kind of create a space at the National Counterterrorism Center where people feel like they are at home, where people can be themselves and contribute their best self to the work that they're doing. And they can see themselves in the leaders that are leading them. And so I'm really proud to see just the kind of strides that we're making at NCTC and in the IC generally. But I think we have a long way to go. And I think we have the kind of leadership focus and attention and recognition of this as a strategic competition imperative that is exactly right for the time.
Okay, all right. One last question, because, and this will be the last, I promise. So we always ask a lot of times those things that maybe keep you up at night and all of that. But what are your biggest challenges? We get a lot of questions I've got from industry. How can industry best help, whether it be IT, workforce, or whatever? What are the biggest challenges you've got that you think you're going to need help from industry?
Help us connect the dots. There are more and more dots every day. We are in a data environment where the relevant dots versus the wheat from the chaff problem is just going to get bigger and bigger. And the only way we're going to get to what really matters and know when to really care about what we're seeing is by having the technology that helps us do that in the most effective and efficient way. And NCTC was created to connect the dots. It was created by a failure to have connected the dots. And so when I think about this great data environment that I have inherited, when I think about the technology that we need to bring to bear to get the best of it, that's what I would ask in terms of help, is help me connect the dots.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, we thank you for your time. And again, congratulations. And NCTC, you guys have done a great job. Keep America safe.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Really?
Yes, first, let me thank you, General Noonan, for moderating our first fireside chat today and for your leadership at FCA internationally. Personally, we appreciate that. Director Abizade, thank you so much for your candid thoughts and remarks and the challenges you're facing out there. Our nation is safer because of people like you. So thank you so much for being with us today. I think you all can agree this is a great way to kick off our summit. So once again, let's recognize Director Abizade. Okay, our first networking break starts now, followed by breakout sessions at 11:30 in the rooms indicated on the screen behind me, I hope. We will reconvene here in the Potomac Ballroom for lunch at 12:30, immediately after the breakout sessions. We'll see you then. Thank you very much.